Well, my week is ruined. I am immensely depressed tonight because a man that I admired as much as I admired Stan Lee during my childhood has passed away at the age of 68, I believe. And this news hit me hard because I would say he was a bigger part of my childhood than Stan Lee was. I mean, I was a comic book fan well before I was an anime and manga fan, but as soon as I got exposed to Dragon Ball Z in the late 90s, the rest was history. I started finding out about GT. I started finding out that this was already a pre-existing manga that I never knew about at the time. I started finding out about the original Dragon Ball series, which, again, at the time, did not know about that. I was only exposed to DBZ. But yeah, after being exposed to all of that, I started collecting all of the action figures. I remember ordering, and this was something that I probably should have not done at the time because I was pissing off my mother because I was making long distance phone calls to Japan and ordering Dragon Ball Z toys from Japan at the time, and I was importing Dragon Ball Z video games for the original PlayStation, such as Dragon Ball Ultimate Battle 22, Dragon Ball Legends, which was at the time for what it was, well, it was a pretty hype Dragon Ball game. You have like 3 versus 3 battles on the screen at the same time. It was nuts. And I believe the third import I got from Japan was Dragon Ball Final Bout, which was just a Dragon Ball GT fighting game, and it was really crappy. But at the time, it was like, oh wow, I have this awesome Dragon Ball GT video game for PlayStation that no one else has. But later on, during I'd say my early to mid 20s, they started to release them over in the US. I think 2 out of the 3 they released over in the USA, and that was Final Bout, which they appropriately they gave it the appropriate title for the US version. They called it Dragon Ball GT, and they released Ultimate Battle 22 over here as well. I don't think they released Legends. Legends remain a Japanese import, but I still got all 3 of those, and I think I got the American versions as well of some of those games. But yeah, I was collecting all of the action figures, the video games, and of course the videotapes from Funimation, where they would release 2 different cuts of the episodes. They would have a censored version and a uncensored version, and I remember I would always beg my mother every time we would go out to a supermarket or shopping mall. I would always beg my mother to buy me 1 or 2 of the Dragon Ball Z videotapes, the uncensored version. Yes, I begged her to buy me the uncensored version because I wanted to see what happened beyond the Frieza saga. Because I remember on TV, they would always air reruns of the Saiyan saga leading up into the Frieza saga to the part where Goku turned into a Super Saiyan. And I was like, and I don't remember what exactly happened to the program that was airing those episodes, but I remember I was unable to see what happened after that until the videotapes start coming out in stores, and thanks to Toonami, which was aired on Cartoon Network, which showed a lot of different animes that never really was shown on US television before. So animes like Gundam Wing, the original Dragon Ball series, Tenchi Moyo, sorry. Uh, and I think Inuyasha was another one. So yeah, thanks to Toonami, I got exposed to a lot of these other animes. Even though I was exposed to anime before that, like late 90s into early 2000s, my first exposure will always be Dragon Ball Z. Uh, into sometime in the early 2000s, one of my uncle's friends showed me like real, or not real, but uh, mature. I think that's the word I'm looking for. They showed me mature anime such as Ninja Scroll and Ghost in the Shell. And I remember, I remember he asked me at the time. He's like, "Hey, you like anime?" And I was like, "Yeah, I watch Dragon Ball Z." And he just looked at me like I was crazy. And he's like, "No, you got to see this." And he popped in the Ninja Scroll videotape and showed me Ninja Scroll, and I was like, "Oh, oh my, this is hardcore." uh, and of course, I've loved all that stuff, and I still do. And, oh yeah, like I forgot, like Toonami would show stuff like Cowboy Bebop and Outlaw Star and Trigun, just to name off a few of those. But I was always a Dragon Ball Z fan first. I'll never forget the first time I saw it on TV. I was like, "What is this bizarre anime? It's so crazy and weird, but I kind of dig it because of the art style and the fighting and the action. I dig it." Even though a lot of my friends at the time thought it was pretty whack. They're like, "Oh, you like that Dragon Ball crap? You need to watch some real anime." I'm like, I don't know what to say, man. I'm having fun with the anime. Jeez, get off my back. But yeah, I could just talk about this for hours and hours and hours and hours, just talking about this man's work of not just Dragon Ball, but oh man, I'm blanking out on that one series. Was it called Doctor Slump? The series that had that small anime character that goes by the name of Arale. I believe she had her own manga series, and she was also in a few episodes of the original Dragon Ball and a few episodes of Dragon Ball Z. And yeah, he also worked on Sandlands, a few video games projects like Chrono Trigger. And Chrono Trigger was great, man. Like his artwork was easily recognizable when Chrono Trigger came out, because you could just tell by just the way the hair and eyes were drawn. We're like, oh, this looks similar to like Super Saiyan Gohan. And I could talk more and more about the video games that I got into my teenage years when the PS2 came out, with the Budokai series, of course, that was produced by, I want to say, Atari. For some reason, my brain is going to Bandai Namco because the action figures came out from Bandai Japan at the time, and a few of those came out to America as well. But I think the Budokai games, were produced by Atari, and I enjoyed all of those, well into the Budokai Tenkaichi series and some of the Game Boy Advance games like Legacy of Goku 2, Taiketsu, Boo's Fury, Dragon Ball GT Transformations. Or no, there's no S with that, right? It's not plural, it's just transformation. Yeah, okay. Dragon Ball GT Transformation, which played like Legacy of Goku, is a similar RPG style game, but it took place within the GT universe, so it followed the GT storyline, and so many others that's sitting on my shelf that I can name off. But you guys get the idea. And yeah, there are a few for Nintendo Wii as well that not a lot of people know about. But this man's work just gave me so much joy throughout the entirety of my teenage years into my, oh man, I want to say to my mid 20s, when I started to slowly um not had a falling out with Dragon Ball, but I just started to I started to move on to other things. But I still appreciated Dragon Ball. I just started to move on to other things because I was just look at I was just looking at all of the things that I collected, like all the Dragon Ball Z DVDs and videotapes and video games and action figures, and I was like, oh, I might have a little bit of an addiction. Maybe I should move on from this stuff for a while. And that I did. Indeed, I did. And every now and then I would recognize his artwork popping up in some other video games or manga, and I was like, oh, that's the work of Akira Toriyama. Uh, yeah, I forgot he came back with Dragon Ball Super. because I didn't really talk about that. But yes, Dragon Ball came back. I guess I started to get into Dragon Ball again. But thank you, Akira Toriyama, for just giving me years and years of just fun, creative entertainment. Rest in power, Akira Toriyama. This man will never, never be forgotten. He was a legend.